welcome to this episode of the Chicana Therapist. I'm very excited because today I have my very first guest, Claudia Muro, who is a friend, a colleague, a fellow therapist. She is not a social worker like me, though. She's an LPC, a licensed professional counselor. So welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming.
Well, I'm very happy to be here, and I'm so happy that I get to be your first guest. That's very exciting for me. I've never done this before, so this is fun. And yes, I'm a licensed professional counselor.
Claudia is also Latina. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your identity, just like where you're from, your family, whatever you want to share?
Yeah, so I considered myself Mexican-American or Latina, and my family is from Zacatecas on one side, Oaxaca from the other side. I was born in California, but I've lived now in Colorado since I was a teenager, so many, many decades, and I just kind of say I'm from Colorado at this point.
Yeah, Claudia is fully bilingual.
I am.
And offers services in either Spanish or English or Spanglish. I understand you have a lot more acronyms behind your name, though. It's not just LPC.
Yes, I have a few more letters. So LPC, which is Licensed Professional Counselor, LAC, Licensed Addictions Counselor, ACS, which is Approved Clinical Supervisor, and PMHC, it's Perinatal Mental Health Credential. So that is one of the things that we work on here in Mirador Counseling, which is maternal mental health, and that's where that comes from.
Awesome. You and I are about the same age, right? I'm 46.
45.
You're a little bit younger.
Más vieja.
And I thought it would be a good idea to have an episode around perimenopause.
Yes.
Because we're in it. we're in the thick of it.
Yes.
And it's come up a lot, and I figured that as counselors, we probably, or I don't know about you, but I hear a lot about it from my clients who are around my age and even a little younger. So I thought today we would talk about perimenopause and how it can impact our mental health and how it can impact our relationships and basically how it can fuck with our lives.
Absolutely. Yes. I am very much in the throes of perimenopause, and I do hear this from my clients, and you're right. I think maybe like mid to late 30s, I'm starting to hear some things, but definitely women in their 40s are coming to me with symptoms that I recognize as some that I've experienced myself or that I've read about. So it's coming up regularly.
Yeah, I've even found myself wondering like what is, just a mental health symptom and what is perimenopause. And I think that because we don't talk about it a whole lot, I don't know about you, but I never heard anything about it. I sometimes bring it up and say, could this be perimenopause? And I find that a lot of my clients are kind of resistant to it. They're kind of like, no, I'm only 35 or whatever the case may be. And it makes me think about how little we know about how it can impact us at a younger age than our age.
Well, I think it's because we sort of associate menopause, not peri, I think that word is important, but menopause as being older, and usually think of people or women in their 50s or 60s. You don't think about, I'm in my late 30s or early 40s. Why would I be in that phase of life? So I think that's part of it.
Yeah, and I think some of us are resistant to the idea that we're those señoras now. Because when you think about when I was younger and I thought of menopause, I thought it was like...
It's old people shit. It's a señora thing, and I am not a señora, even though I live my life that way. But it's for me, I would say it's associated with age and just elderly, and I don't see myself as elderly, but in actuality it isn't, right? It's hormonal. Something else is happening, and I think you're right, that lack of conversation or awareness around it. So we associate it with something else, and when our bodies are telling us that something is off, we ignore it, or we say it's mental health or stress or cualquier otra cosa, except for, it could be perimenopause.
Yeah. I think we also think it's brief, right? When I thought of menopause, I thought it just happened. And maybe I thought you would start getting funny periods before it, and then it just was gone. Menopause is when you don't no longer have a period after a year, right? So I don't think people realize, and no fault of their own, because I don't think very many studies are out there, but the idea that perimenopause can be 10 years prior to actual menopause. And I know that I kind of started hearing more about it and started to take some initiative with some supplements and things like that, but it wasn't until it really started fucking with my mood that I was like, oh, this is definitely what it is. And as I look back, I think there were other symptoms and I was just managing my symptoms.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know about you. How did you know, like, this is happening?
I think similar story. I knew something was off with my body. I could tell. I just couldn't put a name to it. For me, it started with like weight gain. Then I remember my doctor sort of crossing his leg and being like, well, you know, you're older and you're just a really busy woman. You're a mom of two, all these things, but not really like, could it be something else? Because if your diet hasn't changed, everything is the same, why are you all of a sudden gaining more weight for no reason? So that was one of the things. And then, yeah, other little things. Like when I look back, the first time where I was like, oh, I think it's perimenopause was about 2 years ago. But before that, when I look back, I'm like, oh, there was all these little things. It wasn't until it was cumulative. And one of those things was my mood, because I'm not a moody person. I wake up pretty like neutral, and I was in a
morning person.
I'm a morning person, yes. And me waking up in a bad mood for no reason, that was not okay. Thankfully, I was aware enough to know the difference, and I was able to manage it. But then it was like, okay, well, there's all these different things. Something is definitely off. But it was the mood, I think, was the final one.
So for those of you out there who don't know much about perimenopause, or maybe you do, but you know, I don't know, you just need to hear it. Especially, one thing I want to say, let me go back, is that even if you're in your 30s, I think you need to start thinking about this, to be on the lookout to see what we're looking for, because it's not like I thought, just like period changes, right? And so let's talk a little bit about what kind of symptoms we know we can see with perimenopause, physically and mentally. What would you say are like the stereotypical symptoms?
Your period, you're no longer getting it. So I think the cycle one is the most common one.
Yeah, or it's off, like so longer, shorter, skips, etc. I think that's the one that a lot of us know.
Yeah, hot flashes. I think you hear that a lot, right? Like hot flashes, I'm so hot and I'm so cold and I'm all these things. Those are, I would say, the two big ones, and then the moodiness. Those are the 3 things I say I would hear the most.
And by the way, hot flashes can be like, I'm thinking like night sweats. You get up drenched. Or I have only really experienced one, like what I call a wake hot flash, because felt like I was on fire from the inside. It's the only time I've ever experienced a hot flash in the typical sense. Did you ever experience hot flashes?
I didn't, but one of my colleagues did, and she would come in during the day and we were freezing, and she was like, I'm so hot, taking just layers off. She's like, if I could be in the nude, I would be right now, because that's how hot she felt. So, and she said, you know, I'm in menopause. And so that was kind of one of the things that I was like, oh, I need to look out for that. But I haven't really experienced that.
And as far as mood, I think the stereotype is like just being bitchy or whatever. But I think you see anything from just being super emotional to being angry to just being cranky. I've seen it all. Personally, I became much more emotional. Like I wanted to cry over like commercials, you know, that kind of thing, which is I'm not usually like that. And so I knew something was off. I don't know, what kind of moody stuff? You said angry in the morning?
I just felt, it was specific to my husband. And to be fair, he didn't do anything wrong. I literally woke up, had not even seen him, and I was already mad at him. He did nothing. But you know what it reminded me of as you were talking is the fluctuation in mood changes, including the emotional. But it reminded me that I was like, am I pregnant? Because I remember feeling this fluctuation in moods when I was pregnant. And I was like, like, am I pregnant again? Like, there's no way, I'm too old for this shit. So that was sort of one of the things, because I didn't understand my moods that would just shift for no reason beyond that last experience. Yeah,
I also remember thinking like, I don't remember being this emotional since when I was pregnant.
Yeah.
But I knew I wasn't pregnant.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not, there's no way. But then I was like,
wait.
did something happen, right? That was one of the big ones,
Other smaller things that I learned along the way, dry skin.
So I had itchy skin. That was sort of one of the last things that I was like, something is definitely wrong, because my skin was not dry, but it felt like it was. So I was very itchy, and it wasn't all over the body. It was in certain areas of my body, like my arms, my thighs, and my stomach was the worst. And I started getting like little hives, but not all day, every day. It was when my skin felt extra super itchy. And then I also had brain fog. So again, very similar to pregnancy, which I was like, what is going on? So that was what I could relate it to, was like, why am I staring at this for like 15 minutes and I don't know what I read? I don't remember. I'm standing in front of the pantry and I forgot why I came to get something or what it is. I was actually joking with my husband that I was like, oh no, I have man eyes. I can't see the thing that's right in front of me. And that was not like me.
Yeah. Yes, brain fog is huge. So I have ADHD and I have memory issues on the regular, but it got so much worse. It's gotten so much worse. One of the funny things that I noticed, especially when I was teaching, because you're teaching, you're lecturing, whatever, is that I would forget words. Like they would just be gone from my mind. I think one time I was like, what's the word? The opposite of competence, and one of my students was like incompetence, and I was like that. Like I would just forget words, like blank. I don't know how to explain it, and it got really frustrating because it wasn't like I forgot someone's name, although that's a huge issue too. I'm terrible with remembering people's names, but just like everyday words, I was they were gone. I would forget the word. So another thing about perimenopause is that if you do have ADHD, your symptoms could start sooner than people who don't have ADHD. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not.
And they can be like elevated because they're on top of your ADHD. So I was definitely experiencing that. So I encourage people to look up, like even if you're really young, and look up just the different types of symptoms that you can have with perimenopause. But as far as mental symptoms, brain fog is definitely one. The mood stuff is one. What am I forgetting? Motivation, fatigue, and that contributes to your mental health.
I think the level of capacity is huge because nothing else has changed. And on a normal day, you would do 10 things, but now you're like halfway through there and you don't really understand why. I think that's one of the frustrating pieces is like, nothing has significantly changed, but I know I'm not functioning the same, which adds more to this frustration, right? I know for me, I had not quite interrupted sleep, but my sleep pattern changed. I'm a light sleeper, but I sleep consistently. Like I go to bed early and I wake up early. And sometimes getting up in the middle of the night, like wide awake, was not my norm. And that was something that started to shift. So of course, I wasn't going to function at full capacity the next day. I was associating it to sleep, but I couldn't figure out why I would have sleep issues.
Right. Yes. Me too. I'm a good sleeper. I don't have sleep issues. And for a while there, I would start just having trouble going into a deep sleep, kind of like I felt like I was sleeping, but I could hear everything. I was not really sleeping, or I was having trouble falling asleep. And you're right. Sleep directly impacts our mood, our energy, our everything, right? And so that symptom alone, which is another symptom of perimenopause, can really fuck up your normal, right? Yeah.
I also feel like appetite. I love eating, don't get me wrong, and I do eat a lot, but I was so hungry. Like I would eat a full meal, and I could still eat a second full meal and still feel hungry, which was not the norm. And that didn't start early on. That was later on, about 2 years ago. I was gaining weight before that. But at that point, I remember just being like, I'm so hungry, so hungry. And my husband would be like, you just ate this big old meal. Like, why are you still hungry? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm like hungry like I haven't eaten in days. And so I would eat, but I was just not satisfied and I didn't really feel full. So I had to be very mindful of those changes because I was noticing that on a regular basis of like, no, something is off. This isn't me. So appetite was huge. Like just those shifts. And it's so annoying.
Yeah, it's really annoying. I feel like it creeps up on you. And Because I have ADHD, I also have PMDD. We're much more likely to have it with ADHD. So premenstrual PMDD. I'll look it up.
We'll crash it up.
But like basically it's bad PMS, right? And I've always had it. But I noticed as time went on, it got worse and worse and worse. And then it was only a few days before my period, and then it was a week, and then it was 2 weeks, and it got to the point where I felt like I used to say, like, I felt held hostage by perimenopause because it got so bad that I couldn't really function. Like, if you could think about it, all at once, everything was hitting me, and I think that was my turning point of like, okay, I can't ignore this anymore. You talked about yours being that you weren't like yourself. I did not feel like myself at all.
Yeah.
At all. So let's talk more about how perimenopause can impact our mental health. What have you seen in your clients or in the community or with yourself that you think was the biggest issue?
I think with our clients, the biggest, or at least with my clients, the biggest thing I saw was the weight gain. They would come in here like, mi ropa no me queda, está bien apretada y no sé por qué. I'm actually eating better than I normally would, and this is changing. And that would start this frustration with themselves. And then they would talk about the shortness in how they can handle relationship with their partners. It seems to be that the partners are the ones that annoy us the most. And then in parenting, right, you need a lot of patience to parent your kids. And they were like, I'm just so short with them. I'm super irritable. And then it would be that I'm not sleeping as well, or I keep waking up. So those were kind of the most common things. Because I have already experienced those things, I would then question, be like, do you think it might be hormonal? So I wasn't like, hey, this might be perimenopause, but I'm like, could it be hormonal? Why don't we just advocate? And that was one of the things that a lot of them are afraid to find out if there's something wrong, even though it's just hormones. So being able to talk to them, but I would say those were the biggest things, is the weight gain, and now I'm very irritable or very short. And sometimes they would get angry and want to yell, but they would not allow themselves, so they would cry so much for no reason. And from there, it would stem this like increased anxiety because they were unsure of how they were going to emotionally respond to things. So some I found that were like trying to isolate in some ways or from certain people because they didn't want to be triggered. And they didn't want to be emotionally reactive.
So it was impacting not just their romantic relationships, but also really any relationship.
Yeah, any relationship, even just being out, right? Because now it's impacting their self-esteem. They don't feel good in their clothes. Everything is tight. They don't feel confident. And yes, that's at the higher level, but it still impacts the way we feel, right? And so finding themselves not wanting to be in these spaces because they don't want to buy clothes in another size, but they can't fit into what they have because they don't feel good. It just impacts us in so many ways. So it impacts our self-esteem, our confidence, our ability to remember things, all of our relationships.
Yeah. I remember when it got really bad too, like I could feel myself having an attitude even with my friends. I was like, damn, I'm a bitch. And, you know, and I know some of my friends, shout out to Michelle and Mayrita. I remember them because I could almost feel them looking at each other like, I don't know what I would say. I mean, I wasn't outright mean or anything, but I just know I wasn't myself. I was just cranky, I guess, and just impatient.
Do you think it was outwardly, or do you think you just noticed it, but other people maybe didn't?
I think I got to the point where people started to notice. Yeah. And so that was another thing. So yeah, even like, and then I would try to avoid people because I was like, God, I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't
have a filter right now.
What's going to come out of my mouth? So that was another one. And then another thing I see a lot of is el coraje with your pareja, but a lot of it, the times it was because they were not very understanding of what they were noticing, right? And so a lot of like, I don't feel a lot of motivation, I'm really fatigued, I'm moody, and my partner still wants me to go do the things and act like nothing is wrong.
Yes. Not with me personally, but I know with my clients is the sexual drive. So for a lot of them, they're like, I just like no tengo ganas. And they're like, I used to be, but I'm not. And so my partner, my husband, they like they want to. This used to be a normal thing, and now they're feeling rejected. But even just touch, not just like intercourse, but even just touch, like hugging or holding hands, they were like, oh, like it's bothering me. Like, why are you touching me? That was a big one. Where they're like, I don't want anyone to touch me. Yeah.
But even just like fighting about the AC and the heater and the and you know the
any little thing could just set you off.
Anything. And so a lot of times there was arguments among couples because of the mood, and I would say one, the mood, and two, the other person reacting as opposed to being understanding. And I get it, because sometimes we don't even know what's going on and they don't know what's going on, right? And whether or not, I feel like the people I've spoke to who knew what was going on and were able to name it and tell their partners were a little more understanding. But that time before you get to the realization of what's going on, I think is a huge, like, I don't know, just...
Well, I think what you said earlier, what you spoke to, it was just sort of creeping up that you didn't really notice it. So you didn't notice it. It also means your partner didn't, right? So by the time you realized it, or even with your friends, as you said, it took a minute before they actually saw it. Same with your partner. They may not notice it because it's just your day-to-day life until something big happens. So then it's very shocking of like, whoa, what happened? What did I do? How did we get to this place? For you, it's been sort of trickling in, and maybe you started to see it, but we're questioning yourself, right? And if you're not talking about it with your partner, like, I feel off, something is wrong, then they're not even paying attention either.
Yeah, I watch TikToks a lot. I liked watching a lot of videos about perimenopause and stuff. But I know that people say, I'm in my 40s, I'm in my I don't give a fuck era. And so I want to say that sometimes the things we're experiencing aren't necessarily like a bad thing, right? Because I think we do lose a little patience, but especially as Latinas, maybe we lose some of that pressure to just take it all and be strong and don't complain. And after a while, maybe perimenopause, maybe just life, we're just like, fuck that, I'm not taking it anymore. And that's one thing that I have noticed people say is like, I just don't care anymore.
I just don't have the capacity for it. I don't, like, me vale. Like, ya no tengo ganas, no tengo tiempo, no tengo la motivación.
And so you stop catering to people, and maybe those aren't bad things.
No.
Like, maybe those are just bound to happen anyway. And so that's another thing I wanted to bring up, is that sometimes it's not a bad thing, right?
No, sometimes our body pushes us to reach the level where we need to be. And I actually really like being in my 40s because me vale. I don't want to be around certain things in certain ways, and I don't anymore. Where before I maybe would have been like, well, it's rude, or I can do it, it's just a short period, and I'm like, nah, no tengo ganas, no lo voy a hacer. I don't want to. Even my texting, right? People communicate via text or different social media platforms. I've narrowed that down and I've been very clear. But even with my texting, I used to be so good at responding, and I suck now. It's been a couple years. And so I kind of have just said, like, I'm not ignoring you. I just suck at it. Because sometimes I do forget. I'll look at it, and I'm looking at it in between sessions, so I can't respond. Y luego se me olvidó, and 2 days later, I'm like, oh shit, I forgot to respond. I do that a lot. And I used to worry, and now I'm like, yeah, that's a big one for me.
It's true. So some of the things come in as a good thing, I would say.
I think just our priorities change without us thinking about it. I did want to circle back to something you said around our cycles changing. So maybe TMI, but for me, I've never had a regular period, and I was on the IUD. Other than after I had my kids, I haven't had a period, so that was not a factor for me. But I know that's the norm, but that isn't for every single woman. What I did notice is I started getting cramps that I hadn't experienced since I was a teenager. And I thought I was dying, or I was having like some stomach issues, because it was those cramps where you have to like get into the fetal position because it's so painful. And I reached out to my sisters who were younger, and I was like, it's not a stomach issue, so I think it's cramps, but I forgot what to do. You know, it was like, you got to get Midol, a heating pad, un tecito caliente, and I was like, what? I haven't done this since I was like 14, 15 years old. I'm 45. So that was huge for me, because I wouldn't be able to rely on a regular cycle or changes in a cycle, but my body was still cramping up and making those things. Just to be aware that if that isn't you, doesn't mean you're not going through it, but you have to look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, and if there are any fellow PCOS girlies out there, which they've switched the name now, it's PMOS.
Oh.
But one of the symptoms of PCOS is possibly skipping periods or having irregular periods. So sometimes if that's normal for you, you're not going to notice. Yeah. But I also experienced cramping that I hadn't experienced in years.
Yeah. It was so painful.
Yeah.
I was like, I wanted to cry.
Yeah.
Because I was like, well, first I was like, oh my God, what organ is down there? What is happening with my stomach? Because it was that painful and it was happening sporadically. So I couldn't even say that it was like this regular that I figured out how to manage. I was fine one day and then 2 days later I was feeling that way and I'm like, what do I do?
Yeah, it can be really debilitating. What else? No se nos olvida algo.
Your hair. I don't know if you noticed this, but my hair, we all have natural shedding. Mine was a lot. The texture of my hair changed. I used to have straight hair, and now I actually have wavy hair, which was new. So my hair started falling out, and it was really frizzy. I tried different hair products. None of them were really working until one of those nights that I was up in the middle of the night, I decided to do this little hair questionnaire, and I ordered this shampoo. And from there, I was like, oh, I think I have wavy hair. So went and bought hair gel. Turns out I have wavy hair. And that's why my hair was frizzy, because it wasn't straight anymore. I didn't know that. I've always had straight hair. Yeah. So that was a big shift for me.
Yeah, hair can change with hormones. My hair got wavy only in certain areas. Only in the back after I had my kids. I never had wavy hair before that. Yeah. So I know it changes. Yeah. My hair has also thinned, but I just never know what to blame it on. But over the years, my hair has thinned significantly. My skin, I know we talked about dry skin, but even my face, like I used to be a combination. Now I'm dry. So things like that change for sure. Sensitivity to smells or phantom smells. A couple of times now I'm like, huele a cigarro. And my family's like, no.
That's what I'm telling you. I thought I was pregnant because you have the sensitivity to smells. Food. I feel like there was certain foods that I used to love and I would eat great. And now I'm like, wait, like este sabor es diferente and I'm more sensitive, which is all similar to when I was pregnant. That was the only thing I could relate it to, but I was like, I'm clearly not. But it was that. I mean, so many little things that you just don't think about on a day-to-day.
Yeah, and now that I'm reflecting back, it was like hell. But I guess it's kind of like that, slowly boiling water and you don't notice until it's too fucking hot, My doctor actually dismissed me a couple times.
Absolutely, yep.
My doctor, the first time I brought it up, she was like, you have PCOS, so could it be that? Could it be your thyroid? Because I also have hypothyroidism. A lot of symptoms mimic all of that, right? And she was like, I remember another time I mentioned it, and she told me, well, you didn't do well on birth control, because I when you have PCOS, the first thing they want to give you is birth control to control your periods. She was like, you didn't do well on those hormones, so you're definitely not going to do well on HRT because the dose is so much higher. Fun fact, that's not true, but that's what she told me. And I believed her, and I went on months and maybe over a year thinking, pero es que that's not for me. Because if I really hated being on birth control, I'm really going to hate this. I brought it up another time. And she said, this is just, we're going to have to power through it because we're about the same age, my doctor. And finally, when it got really bad, I said, listen, I need to do something. If you can't help me, then I'm going to go to one of these clinics or something. And at that point, I think she had gotten some training because they opened a perimenopause or a menopause clinic where I go. And she was like, no, let's get you some help. And so she referred me to an OBGYN that specialized in menopause. I had to wait about a month, which was hell. But when I finally went, she was so much more informed. She believed everything I told her. She didn't tell me I had to power through. She educated me and said that that is a misconception, that the hormones are a lot more stronger in HRT than they are for birth control. She explained it to me. No entiendo, but it's like, she's like
it made sense when you heard it.
Yeah, it made sense when I heard it. So she put me on my little HRT cocktail. I started an estrogen patch, oral progesterone, and testosterone, like a little cream or ointment, whatever. Santo remedio. Within a week.
Yes.
I was feeling so much better, and I was like, pinche doctora la primera. I suffered.
Yeah.
I suffered for years because she was not informed, and I chose to not advocate for myself because I believed her.
Well, you didn't know you don't know what to ask or what to do. You're kind of just trusting the medical profession, right? Or whoever's in that position, that they know better. And sometimes we don't question it, because if we're not talking about it, then I don't know what to ask for. So we do need to be more informed. I think we need to, especially with young women. But that's not a later problem. It is, and you can still find out some information so you become aware. So when it happens, because it will, you know what to do.
And that's another thing I'm seeing with my clients, is that a lot of them are being dismissed the way I was dismissed.
Yep.
I work with quite a few chronically ill clients, and so I'm not just talking about perimenopause, but some that they're like, this has to be something, right? And they get dismissed, or the doctors aren't educated on that particular topic, which, you know, as clinicians, we know, like, we specialize in certain things, and we cannot keep up with every single research on every single thing, but they get dismissed a lot. And a lot of my work with them is around advocating for themselves, which sucks, because I wish I could talk to the MDs personally. Like, come here, let me talk to you, you know?
Yeah, I had that with my OB, and he's great in any other space, but that one. And yeah, I don't think he was as educated. He entertained me by saying, could be a thyroid thing, let's check it. And it wasn't. I've never had thyroid issues. But what I wanted was a whole blood panel, because it was actually a mommy friend that I was sharing, like, this is how I'm feeling. I don't know. I know something's off, but I don't know what it is. And she was doing her own research. She's like, it sounds like perimenopause. So I started looking into it. I started listening to podcasts. And I started reading some books and some articles just to get educated myself. And from there, I was like, hey, I want a blood panel. And they're like, it's not really necessary. Sometimes this happens. And I was like, no, this is what I need. Thankfully, I had this other nurse practitioner that was like, I don't know what's wrong, but let's do it. And she tested me for everything. And that's when it came up that my testosterone was so low. So I got on the gel, just apply it every day. Within a week, my itchiness went away, my hunger stopped, my mood improved, my progesterone and estrogen were fine at that moment. It shifted within a few months because I have the IUD. But then I replaced my IUD, and within the week, I was like, oh, I feel better. The cramps went away, all of this changed. So I have my IUD for the progesterone and the testosterone. I don't have the patch yet for the estrogen, but IVN, and when it does, I'm happy to take it.
Listen, I will tell anyone who's willing to listen. You know, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. Let me go back and say that as far as I know, and from what the research I've done, you cannot test your hormones, not really, except testosterone. Testosterone you can test, but you can test like progesterone and estrogen and all that, but it won't really give you an accurate look at where you are, because it fluctuates so much. And so that's another reason why I think a lot of doctors hesitate to say, I think it's perimenopause, because there's no real way for them to test it except for testosterone. And so there's that. But also the doctor that I had really educated me on, like, you know, in perimenopause, your highs are too high and your lows are too low, and that's what's fucking with you. And so the HRT helps your lows not be too low, and so no se siente tan drastic, you know. And see, it's true. It's been really helpful for me, and thank goodness. And I just tell people, don't hesitate. She also really educated me on my risk, because there's always the thought of like, you could get cancer, right? But she took some information and she showed me like my risk is like less than 1% based on my medical history.
She
and
sounds like a good fucking doctor.
I love her.
Yeah.
Based on my medical history and my family history, my risk to get cancer is less than 1%. I don't think that's higher than a lot of other things we do that might cause cancer. And so it varies by person. I would just ask somebody who knows. I would look for a physician that specializes in perimenopause or in menopause or perimenopause, because it's hard out here.
It is. And I think to your point, there aren't very many that specialize or that are willing to listen versus just telling you, you're aging, this is just part of life, power through. And so that part is really hard because you really do have to advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
So for me, just getting her to listen and say, listen, I don't know what's wrong, but let's just do this and see what happens.
Exactly.
That was so validating for me. So even though some of the things weren't really going to be so clear for me, the testosterone was obvious, so that helped out. And the others, even though they fluctuate, and she did tell me, it was still just someone heard me and wanted to see a whole picture. And that was huge. And she did offer all the other things, but I was like, let's start with one and see what happens. And that's all I really needed.
I told her, give it all. Give me the cocktail. I find that sometimes you have to tell the doctor, can we try it anyway? Exactly. Like if they're like, I don't think that's what it is, and you could say, can we try it anyway?
Yeah.
You know,
let me decide.
Yes. And if that doctor isn't willing to do that for you, al otro. But if you don't have access, because I know access is an issue, if you don't have access to another one or to a specialist or whatever, hey, can we try this? Can we try this and see what happens?
Yeah.
You know, and go for that, because I think, I mean, if we were all more educated on it. Fíjate que I think I didn't do that with this because half the world goes through this. I assume that physicians would be well trained in it.
No, this is a woman's problem.
Oh my God.
Not a penis problem. You know how many fucking drugs there are for ED? Not for menopause. No, not for that. That you have to power through. But if a guy can't get it up, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Like, let me find drugs everywhere to help you with that problem.
It's like you have a uterus, you're fucked.
Yeah. Best of luck.
That's really what it is. And it doesn't matter what gender your physician is, apparently.
Nope, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And so that's why I was like, well, I mean, you would think half the world experiences this. Why wouldn't they be thoroughly trained in it?
Nope.
They are not.
Nope, they are not.
And so sometimes you have to advocate for yourself. Sometimes you have to ask them to try things. And that's just what it is.
But speaking to that, women also don't talk about it. And I don't know, I've noticed that my mommy friends are white, typically, and they talk about it more openly. But with like my mom or like mis tias or like more with like Mexican or Latina family, I noticed that women in general don't talk about hard things. So this is one of those things that it's like, pues eres mujer, like te aguantas. So they don't even bother to talk about it, because they either or didn't experience truly, or they did, but it was just like, it's just a part of life and you just suffer through, so they don't even mention it. So you grow up not hearing, I don't remember ever hearing things about this until I was like, whoa. And it came from one of my mommy friends, right? And then that's when I started to do this, and I realized, hey, none of them talk about it.
I remember there being whispers, and I don't know where I heard them, of like el cambio de vida.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, that sounds fancy. But I figured someone would tell me about it. Nobody, like my mom never talked about it. My grandma tampoco. Like no one I know was openly talking about it or telling me to expect it or anything like that. I've never heard it brought up. I don't think that it's and I don't know why.
I don't know why people are uncomfortable. I'm curious if it's like, porque quiere decir que estoy vieja, or that something's wrong with me, or that my body's not able to handle it. I wonder if there's some shame around it. There isn't for me, but I'm curious, like, why we don't talk about it.
Yeah, and also our Latinas are very much of a suck it up, buttercup, gotta keep going.
Apariencias.
What's the point of...
Nadie nos va a ayudar, no lo van a arreglar, así que para qué hablamos.
Yeah. So... that's another reason why I wanted to talk more about it. And I've been talking to younger people in my life. I'm like, don't say no one talked to you about it. Let me be the one, because it was just...
Women need to talk about these things. It's just a part of life, so let's normalize it.
Yeah.
Your experience was a little bit different than mine, but we still went through it. It just looks different because of our body types, but we still go through it, so we need to talk about it and just make it normal. Like, it doesn't need to be this secret thing. I also love the funnies around it because it is funny. We can't necessarily change it. We're just going to go through it, so we can have some fun with it, right? We can joke around with it once we get to that place, right? Like, I always say, like, Perry's a bitch or Perry took over. It is what it is, right? And I can joke about it, and sometimes we need to be serious about it.
Yeah, talk about it more. Yeah, it could be shame. It could be that they may not even fucking know what they're going through.
No, yeah. Sometimes we're so disconnected. I feel like as women, we sometimes are on autopilot, just doing so much que cualquier síntoma, we just disregard it. We dismiss it ourselves hasta que nuestro cuerpo dice, ya no puedo más. And then we're like, no sé qué pasó. And it's until they start reflecting, right? They go back and they're like, oh, espérate, llevo como 3 años con esto. So, yeah, like, we just don't have time to slow down. Pero pregúntale de sus hijos, de su tía, de su mamá. They know all the symptoms, when it started, and how to fix it. But with their own bodies, they don't, right? Yeah. They're disconnected from themselves because they've been caretaking for everyone else.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think we're more likely to dismiss ourselves. Like, but did you die? No. Okay, then keep going. And that's fucked up way to treat ourselves, but sometimes that's how we are. Yeah, it's true. Y'all, I know you've been hearing me talk about Oaxaca, the Reencuentro retreat that is this year in September. This is Claudia. This is the other person behind the planning, and we're going to be the 2 therapists there together. Do you want to tell them more about the retreat?
Yeah, I think as you've been listening to this podcast, if you were able to connect with any of these things, you want to come to this retreat. We mentioned feeling disconnected from yourself, like no longer sort of being close to yourself or understanding who you are, where you are, what you're doing, just sort of at a loss. This is where you want to come and do that work. And maybe it's part Perry, maybe it's just a space for you to connect with other people, but it's also a place for you to do that work. So you want to come join us. It's in Oaxaca, September 24th through the 28th. You'll arrive a day early, so you're nice and like rested and settled. And we'll get to do some workshops. We'll build community. We will go on some excursions. And by the end, you should really have a good roadmap of reconnecting with yourself and staying connected to self throughout the rest of your journey until the next retreat where you'll want to join us again.
Yeah, exactly. We'll take you medicated or unmedicated.
Yeah, whatever you want.
We can handle it. I'm really excited about it. I think as it's getting closer, I'm just getting more excited and thinking about different fun workshops we're going to have with people. It's going to be hopefully healing for people, but also a challenge. We're hoping that people walk away with a sense of clarity.
Yes.
Healing and deep connection to other Latinas because we don't have a lot of spaces like that.
We don't.
Yeah.
And that was the whole mission behind this. I think as we were talking with shared things going on with their clients, we're like, we need to just create this space for this women. And we know because we've been through it ourselves, which is a different angle, right? It's like, yes, we can go through this with you because we've done this work ourselves. But just this idea of connecting with other women, not having to explain yourself, that piece is huge. Just with other Latinas, to even joke around about like, yeah, my mom never shared this. We never talked about this. Mis tías decían esto, esta otra cosa. But not having to explain those pieces and being able to work on yourself with other people that are also wanting to do that work, that very specific work. I think that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had people tell me, but why only Latinas? I mean, because other people have spaces, they're everywhere. We don't have a whole lot of these spaces at all. And there's something to be said about not having to explain yourself, about, having people just know where you're coming from as far as culture goes. And we're not talking about language because we have people who may or may not speak Spanish. That's not what it's about, but it's about, growing up in a collectivist culture and all the things that come with that. So that's why we chose to make it Latinas only. We might in the future do a women of color only. Yeah, I feel like sometimes when you go to, especially retreats where the majority is white, people come back more exhausted, let's be honest, for different reasons. they're strangers and already you have something that they might not understand about you, etc. We don't want that to happen.
No. I know that I've gone to these spaces and I'm usually like the token brown person, or it's maybe me and someone else. But even the way that I show up is different, right?
Yeah.
Because of the space that I'm in, I want to show up. I don't know if it's quite performative, but I know I'm showing up differently.
It's a mask.
Yeah.
You have to wear a mask.
Because they're not going to understand certain things that are either normal or funny, or people just get it, where in this space they might look at me funny because they just don't have that cultural background or context. And so I'm just not even going to show up in that space. So I'm very clear about what it is, and what we want for Oaxaca is to people just show up as you are, connect with us. Let's nurture all those wonderful pieces. You have the space to identify and change the things that you want to that fit for you. But it really is just about like, I don't have to show up in any specific way. I just get to be me.
Yeah. Yes. And that's what we're hoping for. We have a couple spots left. So don't hesitate to go to my website at thechicanatherapist.com and click on retreats and you'll get more information. Or you can go to miradorcounseling.com.
Yep. Click on retreats and you'll get more information there as well. You're also welcome to email or message us, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for being my first guest.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Please remember to follow me. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and now I'm on Facebook too. Sign up for my newsletter. And definitely, if you're in Colorado and have any needs for therapy, reach out to Mirador Counseling. Yes. They have a few therapists.
Yep, the majority of our clinical staff is bilingual. We have a couple of interns that are not, but they're still amazing and happy to help you. Yeah. So, reach out.
Yeah, cuídense mucho. Thank you for listening. This podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only. Nothing shared in this podcast constitutes therapy, clinical advice, or a therapeutic relationship. Listening to this podcast does not establish a provider-client relationship, and if you're experiencing a mental health crisis or in need of clinical support, please contact a licensed mental health professional or call or text 988 Crisis Hotline.